Okay, we are ready to get started. So we are at the bottom of Daf Mem Hey of a base, and we had a machlokes. The Gemara quoted a machlokes between the Yehuda and the Rabbanan. The machlokes was whether or not all of the halachas of Motzi Shem Ra apply if it was loy b'al. So the classic textbook case of Motzi Shem Ra is if there was a naira hamurasa, and then she became a nesua, and after the husband had relations with his wife the first time, he made this accusation that she had been mizana while she wasn't a rusa. But what happens if he makes this accusation even before he has relations with his wife? It's after the wedding, they're getting ready to go to the hotel, and two Adam approach the husband and say, "You got to talk to you before he goes to the hotel. You got a problem." And all these accusations came out before the actual deal. And that's what the shaila was between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. And Rabbi Yehuda said that even though it would not be the kanas of 100 shkolim that the husband has to pay the father of his wife, even though that might not exist if there was no beer yet, but he would still get malchus, because the malchus that he gets is for lashon hara, which is a generic lab that's not directly connected to the sugya of Motzi Shem Ra, because it says l'seilech rachel ba'amecha. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda holds regardless they would be malchus, but there would not be the other penalty. The knas would only be if it follows precisely those parameters. That's what Rabbi Yehuda says. The Chachamim say, regardless, both parameters would apply. In other words, the halachas of Motzi Shem Ra apply even if the Baal never had bia with his wife. That's the machlokes that we have.
He gets malchus in both cases.
Regardless, he would get malchus because the malchus is a separate avera, nothing to do with the Motzi Shem Ra.
Well, that's what Rabbi Yehuda.
That's what Rabbi Yehuda says.
Yeah.
He gets malchus regardless. And the Rabbanan say,
he gets malchus regardless.
but he also pays a knas. So the machlokes is about the knas. The machlokes is about the knas. The malchus, everybody agrees with. Okay, so let's see the Gemara right there. So frek the Gemara. We are 4 lines from the bottom on the Mem Hey on the base. The Savar Rabbi Yehuda Lilkos Loika Mikol Makom. Does Rabbi Yehuda actually hold that regardless there would be malchus? And again, Rashi says because of the lav of Leiselech Rachel Ba'amecha. And Akiva asked last night, isn't Leiselech Rachel isn't Lashon Hara lav shem b'maisa? You're merely speaking. You're not actually doing an action. And on that Rashi says that's correct. And Rabbi Yehuda holds that lav she'ein b'maisa loikanolo. You get malchus for a lav she'ein b'maisa. But frek the Gemara, v'atanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer boal loika loy boal ein loika. Rabbi Yehuda said elsewhere differently. He said that there wouldn't be malchus unless it was baal. So we have a direct steer in Rabbi Yehuda himself, and that says Amar Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak loike makas mardus midrabanan. When Rabbi Yehuda said earlier that he gets malchus, you're right. It's not because of loy selech rachel ba'amecha, like we said a moment ago. It's only because of a derabanan that can makas mardus. It's makas mardus. It's not a regular malchus. So therefore, it's not a steer. Where Rabbi Yehuda said he gets malchus, he just means makas mardus. And where Rabbi Yehuda says he doesn't get malchus, it means he doesn't get the malchus of the deraisa. That's one teretz to answer the steer in Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Papa Amar, another teretz. My boa loika de katani, the second brisa that says boa loika, loy boal ene loika. What does loika mean? It doesn't mean like what we think it means, that he gets malchus. It means my boa loika de katani hasam mamon. It means he gets hit with a fine. Frek the Gemara of a kari leila mamon malchus. Are you going to say that when your reader says loika or ene loika, he's not really referring literally to Malchus. Rather, he's referring to a financial penalty. Zokim in, it's exactly what we're saying. And you find something similar. Vatnan, ha'imr chatzi erki alai. So let's say there's a halach of erchin, where you say this person's erchin should be on me, or my erchin should be on me. There's a prescribed amount in the Torah, depending on the age of the person, what the erchin is. So what if someone says, I accept upon myself half of the prescribed amount that the Torah says? So the halach is noisin chatzi erkai. He pays half of that amount. So let's say the Torah prescribed amount was 50 shkolim. He only has to give 25 shkolim because he accepts upon himself to pay half that amount. Rabbi Yosy Omer loike, he gets malchus the noisin erech shalom, and he has to pay the full value that the Torah prescribes. Frektimer loike amai. Why would he get malchus? What did he do wrong? All he did was he accepted upon himself erechim. He did nothing wrong to get malchus. And Omer Apapa loike be'erech shalom. He gets petched. He gets punished by having to pay the full erech. So you see here the word loika is used to describe a monetary payment. So loika doesn't necessarily mean physically getting beaten. My timer, what is the reason why Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda says that you have to pay the full erech? He only accepted upon himself chatzi erech. So why would you be mechayiv him his full erech? Zok the Gemara, because the way he articulates his nether could make a very big difference, and he might not know that difference. What if someone didn't say chatzi erchi alai, but rather he said erech chatzi alai? There's a very big difference between the two. If someone said chatzi erchi alai, he's saying take the full payment, and I accept upon myself half of that payment. But if I said erech chatzi alai, I'm saying I want the full value of half my body. Now, we know that if half a person's body is cut out, he'll die. He can't survive. So, therefore, since half his body is something which we say it's an aver, it's a part of his body that if you took it away, it would kill him completely. So, therefore, we perceive as he's saying a full erech, because the amount of his body that he's donating is enough to take down the entire body. So therefore, the erech yetzoi havelei aver sheneshama tliboi. If someone said the erech of half of my body is on me, automatically that means the full erech, because half the body is the full body, because the other half of the body would not be able to survive without this half. Even if he said erech my heart alive, he would also have to pay his full erech, because a human can't survive without a heart. Rashi gives many examples of different body parts. If he says erech roishi alai, the erech of the head, that's also the full body, because once again, his head would impact the full body. So therefore, since there's such a slight difference between the two ways of articulating this nether, and then one he will be mechuyev, the full body, therefore, Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda says, regardless, he will have to pay for the full body, because we don't want him to get mistaken by a small nuance in the difference of how he put one word in front of the next. Tana Rabbanan. So at the end of the day, relevant to our sugya is we have a Rabbi Yehuda and we have a Shaila. Does Rabbi Yehuda say that he gets a Malchus Doiraisa because of Loiselech Rachel B'Amecha in the case of Motzi Shem Ra, or is Rabbi Yehuda saying that you only get the Malchus Doiraisa if you follow the rules, if it fits exactly the case of Motzi Shem Ra, meaning the husband was boiled the wife. But if the husband wasn't boiled the wife, he gets a Malchus, but not Malchus Doiraisa, he gets a Malchus Margus. Those are the two versions. Tana Rabbanan, v'onshu oisai, zemamon. So now we're going to learn, where do we know the halacha that he pays money and that he gets Malchus? So it says in the parasha of Motzi Shem Ra, v'onshu oisai, they punish him. And we say that means mammon. Then it says v'yisru oisai, it says that as well, zeh Malchus. Zok to Gemara, b'shlama v'onshu zeh mammon. We know when it says v'onshu in the pasuk, it means mammon because the pasuk makes that very clear. So obviously it's referring to mammon. And then it says v'nosmal dinar. Elava Yisru, when it says v'yisru oisai, zeh Malchus, minolan. How does the Tana know that when the pasuk says v'yisru oisai, it's referring to Malchus? Omer Rabavo, Lamadnu, this is again a multi-step Zereshava. Lamadu, the Yisrael from a different place, which says Yisrael, which Rashi will tell us is referring to Ben Sayer Meyer. The Yisru mi Ben, and we know in the Parsha of Ben Sayer Meyer, it says Ben, as in Ben Sayer Meyer. And there's another place where it says Uben mi Ben, and the Ben of Ben Sayer Meyer will learn out of a different pasuk, which speaks about giving somebody malchus. But the pasuk says, "V'haya in bin hakoysa Rasha asar le'Motzi Shem Ra." Period. So it's a very interesting Zereshava. V'haya in bin hakoysa Rasha is the makar of malchus. Using the word ben, we transmit that to Ben Sayer Umayra, that when it says V'Yisrael by Ben Sayer Umayra, it means they give him malchus. And then from V'Yisrael Ben Sayer Umayra to V'Yisrael by Motzi Shem Ra, we pass on the halacha that there's malchus given when the Torah says V'Yisrael. Perfect. Ashara l'Motzi Shem Ra minala. We know he gets malchus, but normally there has to be an isser. What's the lav? Where's the isser that the Torah specifically states that it's usher to do what he's doing, and that's why you give him malchus? Because we know anytime the Torah says you give malchus, there has to be a lav associated with it. It says in the pasuk, "Loiselech Rachel ba'mecha." That's how we know that's the isser. The lav of Motzi Shem Ra is a generic lav. It's not exclusively stated Lagabi Motzi Shem Ra. It's Lagabi anyone speaking bad. Loiselech Rachel ba'mecha. It's from V'nishmarta mikol davara. Now, V'nishmarta mikol davara is a very interesting pasuk because that's speaking about when someone's at war. When someone is at war, when Klal Yisrael is at war, during that war, V'nishmarta mikol davara. Many Rishonim learn that that's not only speaking to Lashon Hara, it's also referring to divulging military secrets. Why would it be related to a wartime? It's because nothing that's inappropriate should be spoken, including military secrets, even if nothing's derogatory. But the pasuk wants to say that when the Shemait Mikol Davara is referring to any type of lashon hara. And Rashi, just to the right and just about a half inch above where we're holding in the Gemara, says the Chol Mokem Shenemer Hishomer Pen Va'al. Any one of these three expressions, Eini El Lois Haseh. That means it's a Lois Haseh. So we now have two potential makaris to the halacha of Motzi Shem Ra. Beautiful. Rabbi Lazar, my time elo emer mahai. Rabbi Lazar used loiselech rachel. He didn't like the pasuk of v'nishmarta. Why? Hahumi boile lichad Rav Pinchas ben Yair. V'nishmarta we need to tell us a chiddush that Rav Pinchas ben Yair taught us in the Maseches Avodah Zarah, and that is v'nishmarta mikol davara. Mikan omer Rav Pinchas ben Yair. From this pasuk, Rav Pinchas ben Yair taught us. Al yahaher adam b'yoyim. A person should not think about inappropriate things by day, which will then lead him to have wet dreams. Zok Rashi, how do we know that that's what this pasuk is referring to? Because right after this pasuk, it speaks about someone who's a Balkari. So you see that the Nishmat and the Kol Davara is being careful not to think about things during the day that could lead one to become a Balkari at night. For Rav Nosson, my time mahai. Why didn't Rav Nosson like the pasuk of Loiselech Rachel ba'mecha? Zok the Gemara, Hahu Loiselech Rachel ba'mecha has nothing to do with lashon hara. We always have in our minds pre-programmed that Loiselech Rachel means you're not allowed to peddle gossip. But you see, Rav Nosson has a whole different shot in this pasuk. It's Ashara leBezdin. It's warning Bezdin in how they treat people who come to petition them. Shelo yehi rach lozeh v'kasha leheh. So means you should not be soft to one person and tough to another person. They have to treat each one of the Baalei Dinim perfectly evenly. Loy Amar La'edim. Okay, period. So that's what Rav Nosson learns with L'Shelech Rachel, and therefore his makar is V'nishmat and Mikol Davara. Now, this whole thing of Motzi Shem Ra, Adam came, right? In order for him to defame her, Adam came. So if we're blaming him for Adam coming, he must have had involvement in them coming, right? Obviously, he hired them to say false testimony about her. If they came completely on their own, why would he be guilty? What did he do wrong? And that's what the Gemara says now. Loy Amr la'edim boyu v'heidumi. Let's say he didn't bring Edim to come and say that his wife was unfaithful. But v'hein me'id noisem me'alein. They came on their own to say testimony that his wife had sinned. The halacha is who ain't like it. Of course, even if they're proven wrong, he doesn't get malchus because he wasn't involved. It wasn't his. He didn't prompt us. He didn't pay them. He didn't hire them. The einay noisem me'isloim. So therefore, he's not subject to all of the penalties of Motzi Shem Ra because he is an innocent bystander. Okay. It says he v'zayimeh makdimin leveis haskila. Frag the Gemara. He v'zayimeh asol kedaitach. How could it be possible that she goes leveis haskila, and because we consider her to have been mizana, and her edim are also going to leveis haskila because they're edim zayimim. Ella oihi oy zayimeh makdimin leveis haskila. It's only one of the two. Zog the Gemara weiter. Time of the whole reason why the Brisa is saying that he's potter from the consequences of Motzi Shem Ra is because he didn't say anything to Adam. He didn't prompt Adam. He didn't invite Adam. Ha'amar lahu. What if he asked them to come, but he didn't pay them? Afal gav d'lo yagrinu. So from this Brisa you see that he's only exempt from the punishments, from the sanctions of being Motzi Shem Ra if he had zero involvement. The Adam came on their own. But if he prompted, asked, invited the Adam to say this false testimony, even though he didn't pay them, he's still going to be considered a Motzi Shem Ra, and he will still be sanctioned with malchus as well as knas. Lafukim Rabbi Yehuda. This is a clear dissent from Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. The Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer Einichai Yiskar Adam. Rabbi Yehuda says it's not enough that he invited Adam. That wouldn't condemn him as a Motzi Shem Ra, unless he actually paid them. My time with Rabbi Yehuda. Where did Rabbi Yehuda get it from? That unless the husband pays Adam to say false testimony on his wife, he has no liability, even though he urged them and encouraged them and invited them. We use the word sima to teach us from the parasha of Motzi Shem Ra to the parasha of Ribis. It says in the parasha of Motzi Shem Ra, "V'sam law alilas devar." He put down upon her a defamatory libel. So there's the word "some," putting down. It says in the parasha of Ribis, you should not put upon your borrower neshech of Ribis. Malalon mammon. Just like Ribis means mammon, the borrower is paying more money than the value of the loan. Avkan mammon, so too when it says the some law, it's a chiyuv of mammon. Amr Nachman bar Yitzchak, v'chein tani Rabbi Yosef Tzidoni, Bei Rab Shimon ben Yochai, Asya Sima. So we see other people agree to learn from Ribis to Motzi Shem Ra that we're talking about a payment of money that has to be given today. Boy Rabbi Yirmiyah, what happens if Sachron Bekarka? You did pay the Edom, but you didn't pay them with cash or another type of monetary instrument. Rather, you paid them with karka. Why would that make a difference? Because Ribis does not apply with karka. Ribis only applies with cash. Let's see Rashi. Shachem Bekarka Rabbi Yehuda Mao. Keeping the Ribis Gomar, since we're learning that there has to be a payment only from Ribis, well then Kesef Oichel Be'inam. It has to be some type of mobile instrument. Davamataltlin. Kidich in your Ribis. By Ribis, you're only over if you pay with money, not if you pay with karka. Or maybe you're just learning that there has to be some type of monetary compensation. The details we don't learn from Ribis. And although by Ribis it's only with metaltlin, maybe if he paid the Edom karka here, it would also render him to be a Motzi Shem Ra. The karka mao. Or bepachas mishava pruta mao. What if he paid them less than the shava pruta? By Ribis, that wouldn't be a problem. Or shneim bepruta. There's two Edom involved. And together he paid them a pruta, meaning each one only got a less than a pruta. Mao. What would the halacha be? Since we're learning from Ribis, how similar, how alike to Ribis must it be? Boy Rabashi, what about Motzi Shem Ra al hanisum harishanim? And Rashi says a man married a woman, made nisuin, and then divorced her. And then he took her back again. And when he took her back again, he made an accusation that before the last Nisuin, in the original marriage, that's when she sinned. So that's not exactly like the case listed in the Torah, but would that also be, would you apply the halachas of Motzi Shem Ra to such a scenario? Or al nisui echav mau. What if his brother died without children, and she fell to him to Yibum, and he made Yibum, and then he accused her of being a ba'ula? Now, of course, it has to be where his brother never had relations with her, because his brother only had Erison. And then he married her and had Nisuin. Actually, it says al nisui of it. Okay, so I am wrong what I said. His brother made Nisuin, and then he came and he married her, and he claimed that before his brother's Nisuin, there was a violation. So that's what it means. Before his brother's Nisuin, there's a violation. But his brother, in fact, made Nisuin, because the Gemara says, al nisui of it. Now, what would Allah be? So we now had 5 questions in a row. We had the question of if he paid the karka, if he paid with pachos misham pruta, if he paid them both with a single pruta, if it was Motzi Shem Ra on an earlier marriage, or if it was Motzi Shem Ra on his brother's prior marriage. So Zok Gemara, you have 5 good questions. We can't handle them all. But Pshoit Miachada, we could at least find an answer to your last question. If he made Yibam on his brother's wife, and he made an accusation that when this woman was an arusa to his brother, she had sinned, that I can bring a right. To Tanya Rabbi Yoina, it says in the parish of Motzi Shem Ra, Esbiti nasati le'ishazeh. The father says to Bezin, I gave my daughter to this man. The father never gave his daughter to the Yavim because the Yavim got her automatically when his brother died. The father only gave his daughter to the deceased brother. So therefore you see that the parsha of Motzi Shem Ra does not apply to a Yavim. My Rabbanon Umar Rav Elazar ben Yaakov. At the bottom of Amud Beis, we talked about a machlokes Rabbi Yehuda under Rabbanon, and the Gemara had a question: does Rabbi Yehuda hold like Rav Elazar ben Yaakov, or does both the Rabbanon and Rabbi Yehuda hold like Rav Elazar ben Yaakov? And the main point that the Gemara said from Rav Elazar ben Yaakov is that the parsha of Motzi Shem Ra does not apply to a man who did not yet make bia on his new wife. Only if he already made bia on his new wife will the parsha of Motzi Shem Ra apply. So now the Gemara wants to get down into the details of this machlokes between Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov and the Rabbanon, because the machlokes is about a lot more than just whether or not the rules of Motzi Shem Ra apply if the husband already made bia or not. Rather, we're going to see Rabbi Eliezer when he goes through the psukim of Motzi Shem Ra, he translates every word as literally what the Torah says, and therefore he has a lot of limitations and restrictions as to where the sugya of Motzi Shem Ra applies. The Tanya we learned, Ketzad Hoitzeh Shem Ra. Exactly how does it work? Bal lebezdin v'omar Ploini. This husband comes along and says, Loi matzasi levitcha b'sulim. I didn't find b'sulim by your daughter. So the brisa goes on. If in fact he can bring edim that this woman was mezana while she was married to him, yesh la ksuba mana, she gets her ksuba. Frek Gemara, right off the bat, that makes no sense at all. Im yesh edim shezin tatachto yesh la ksuba mana baskilahi. Not only doesn't she get a ksuba, she's chayiv skila. If he has edim that this woman was mezana when she was a nair hamarasa, she'll get skila. She won't get ksuba. Hachi kamer. Zok Gemara, this is what the brisa means. Im yesh edim shezin tatachto. If there are in fact edim that she was mezana while she was a rusa biskila, then she'll get skila. But zinta meikara, but what if she was mezana before she was ever married to him? So when she was mezana, she wasn't chayiv any type of isser. The only problem is that she presented herself to him as a basula when she was really a baula. So therefore, yesh la ksuba mana. We say that he still has to pay her ksuba, which is a mana. He doesn't have to give her masayim. He has to give her a mana because that is the ksuba that a baula would get. Nimtza Shem Ra, Einay Shem Ra. What if it turned out that his accusation was not true? His claim that she was mizana was not true, the Edom that he brought were proven to be false Edom, then who like it? He gets Malchus, V'noisin Meya Sela, he gets Malchus, and he also has to pay a knas of Meya Sela to the father of his wife, Bein Baal Uvein Loy Baal. It doesn't make a difference if he already had relations with his new wife or not, he still has to pay the knas. That is the shita of the Tanakh. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Eimer, Lo nemru dvarim halalu ela kishabal. The halachas of Motzi Shem Ra, which require that he pays 100 shkolim, only apply when there was actually a bia, when he really made bia with his new wife. Zaktamar Bishtam Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov's approach is actually easiest to accept. Hanu d'chsev uva eileha. It says in the pasuk that he tells Bezin, I came to my wife, the ekrav, which the Pashat of Pshat means they had relations. Elul Rabbanon, according to the Rabbanon, who learned that this parasha applies even if they didn't have relations, Mayu ba'ila, the ekrav. What do these two words mean? Zok Gemara, they will touch it up as non-literally. Uva'ila, meaning ba'lilos. He came to her with a accusation. The ekrav b'dvarim, with words. So it doesn't literally mean a bia, it means he approached her. Okay, let's look at other psukim in this parsha. Bishtam Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Hani d'ksiv loy matzasi levitcha b'sulam. Loy matzasi levitcha b'sulam means I had bia with her and there was no dam. Saying that Edom came, that's not him finding anything. That's Edom finding. Elul Rabbanon, that it's all Edom. My loy matzasi levitcha b'sulam. What does it mean? Loy matzasi levitcha b'sulam. Zakta Gemara, it means loy matzasi levitcha kishrei b'sulam. I didn't find that your daughter had the kashrus of b'sulam, meaning it seems like there's Edom here. So kishrei b'sulam, Rashi says, with the Edom sheyazimu or yakrishu es elu v'yachshiru es bitcha l'b'sulam gemura. I have Edom who say that she was mezana, and I don't have any other Edom to refute what those Edom say. So therefore, I didn't find any Edom that would reestablish your daughter as a b'sulam. That it means literal. It says the father comes to Bezdin with a sheet and shows Bezdin, demonstrates to Bezdin, these are the b'sulam of my daughter. Meaning, he brings a sheet that they used on that night and shows that there's dam on it. That's proving ve'ela b'sulei biti. What does that mean? He brings the Edom and says, these Edom are going to retroactively show that my daughter was clean. Again, you see clearly Rabbi Eliezer is reading into every word in the Parsha as literal, and the Rabbanan are giving more space to learn that it's not literal. They literally spread out the sheet that has dam on it. What type of beged, what type of fabric are they spreading out in front of Bezdin? What he put down the samla lilus devarim, the husband put down the accusation, they spread it out and they rip it apart. Kiditanya uparsha selma melamed shabon edim shalzeh the edim shalzeh, the edim who claims that she was mazana, and the edim who claims that these edim were nowhere to be found at that point in time, and they make everything clear. Just like a brand new beged has no creases in it, so too they analyze these edim carefully and leave no stone unturned to make sure that they know exactly who's saying the truth. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Eimer, Devarim kiksobam. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says no, everything is literal. Simla is mamish. It's a real beged. They really have to present the sheet that they used the night of the wedding to show the dam. Sholach Rabbi Yitzchak bar Rabbi Yaakov bar Giyurei Mishmeit Rabbi Yochanan. Af agav shaloi matzinu b'chol haTorah kula shechilek hakosav bein b'yikedaka levi shaloi kedaka l'makos shelo einshin. Even though any time the Torah punishes somebody for having a bia, doesn't make a difference if it's a bia kedaka or a bia shaloi kedaka, they have the same status. Avol Motzi Shem Ra, when it comes to Motzi Shem Ra, chilek, there it makes a very big difference. What does that mean? Einoi chayiv achi yivel shaloi kedaka v'yoytzi Shem Ra kedaka. The only time there'd be a chiyuv of Motzi Shem Ra is if he's claiming that she had relations illegally during the Erusin, but the relations that she had was the bia kedaka, and he had to have had relations with her. The husband himself had to have had relations with her of Bia Shaloi Kedarka, which is a very absurd suggestion. But the Gemara says it doesn't make sense. Come on. Ikar Rabbanan, if we're going to look at Rabbanan, he holds the parsha of Motzi Shem Ra applies even if there was no Bia by the husband at all. Avagav D'loiba. So this comment of Rabbi Yochanan cannot be consistent with the Rabbanan. And Ikar Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, and if you want to say that this comment of Rabbi Yochanan is consistent with Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, well, idi kedarka be'ina. In both cases, you need Bia kedarka. And the proof is in the pudding, because Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov learned that the father brings the sheet of the night of the Bia and shows there's blood on it. If it was a Bia Shaloi Kedarka, there wouldn't be any blood. Ella, Sholach Rav Kahana Mishmei Rabbi Yochanan, Einei Chayiv Ad Sheyivel Kedarka Yosy Shem Ra Kedarka. Rather, we have to change what Rabbi Yochanan said. We'll say he's going according to Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, and he says that the parsha of Motzi Shem Ra only applies if the husband made a proper Bia on his wife the first night, and the accusation was that she was Mizana Kedarka as well. Beautiful. We're going to discuss now the rights that a father has on the finances or other halachas of his daughter. So he has the right to be Mekadosh, to marry her off to whomever he wants to, either B'kesef, whether he accepts Kedusha Kesef for his daughter, or B'shtar, whether he accepts a Kedusha that's done through a shtar, or B'bia. He even has a right to give his wife over to a man, and he'll be Mekadosh with Bia. Zakai b'mitziyasa. If she finds something, he gets to keep that. Uvamai sideh. And if she earns money and she has a job, he gets that money as well. Uvaforis nederel. If she makes a neder, the father has a right to nullify that neder. Umakabel eskita. If she's married mina erison and her husband wants to give her back, he is the one who accepts her get. Ve'enei oichel peiros b'chayah. What if his daughter yarshins something that he doesn't have a right to? She yarshins something from her mother. So the halacha is she has now that piece of property, and that property will produce pears, which belong to her out of her father's reach. Does he get to eat the pears of those fields while she's in his domain? And the answer is no. Those pears will have to be sold, and the money has to be put into a trust fund, and all of that money will be saved for her for when she becomes an adult. Otherwise known in the Guru as T3, right? You know what T3 means? T3 is a trust, right? Nisis, what if she became a Nesua? Now she's out of her father's domain and she's in her husband's domain. Yes, or Olav Abal, her husband has greater financial interest in her than her father did. You know why? We know that if a woman brings an asset into a marriage and it's nichse maluk, who gets to eat the pears? Who gets to benefit from the pears of that field throughout the marriage? The husband. The husband gets all the pears. Yet the land itself will go back to her if the marriage breaks up. And a husband is v'chayiv b'mizoynei. A husband is chayiv to support his wife. If she is kidnapped, he is mechuyev to redeem her. And Rashi says that that's not bestin. And if she dies, he is mechuyev to bury her. And Rashi says, and the Gemara is going to tell us later, since he's entitled to the assets that she brings in to a marriage, so as a payment for that, he has to accept upon himself the expenses of burying her. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, and Rabbi Yehuda says he can't just go get away with a Kijiji version of a funeral, basic bottom of the line. There's minimum standards that he has to honor his wife with a funeral, and that is afilu oni shebi Yisrael, no matter how poor he might be, lo yivchash mishnei chalilin. There has to be two flutes by the levaya. I guess in those days they played flute by the levaya. Umikanenes, and one woman who gets other women to cry. She knows how to induce crying in other women. Zok Gemara, bekesef minala. How do you know that he gets to keep the kedusha kesef if he accepts kedushin for his daughter? Omakra, it says when an adain has to free an amma ivriya, either when she becomes a naira or after her 6-year term expires, it says v'yatza chinam ein kasher. She leaves the domain of her adon, of her master, without any exchange of payment. And we make a deal. Ein kesef l'adon zeh. This adon is who she could leave without any type of payment. But the yes kesef l'adon acher. There's other instances where this girl leaves the domain of somebody, and we're going to refer to her leaving the domain of her father, where there is money exchanged. Umani ovia. So from Amma Ivriya, we learn that when she leaves her father's domain by getting married, there's an exchange of kesef. I agree there's an exchange of kesef, but how do you know that he gets the kesef? Maybe she gets it. Zok Gemara, that's a svara. Hashta avil makabel kiddusha. We know that it's the father's right to marry her off. He owns that right to marry her. You're going to suggest that she should have the rights to the money? If he owns this right, he should get payment for that right. When it says it's beating the maybe that's talking about a father who's marrying his daughter off, which is a ketana. That's where he gets the money. The less loyat, because she doesn't have a yad. A ketana doesn't even have a yad to be mekabel anything. Avol naira, but if he's marrying off a girl who's above 12, where he also has rights to marrying her off, there is loyat, but she could technically be mekabel because of something on their own. Maybe she will marry herself off, and she gets to keep the money. How do you know that he gets to marry her off as a naira as well, and that he gets to keep the money as well? Amar Kra, the pasuk says, "Legabe the halacha of nedarim," that the father could be made for his daughter's nedarim bin urel beisavia, when she's a naira in the domain of her father. And we learn from this case of nedarim, and we had this exact Gemara a couple of blot ago. Kol shvach neurim laveya. Any benefit that her nairis has, her father owns. Frak the Gemara, if you're going to tell me that we could learn from a pasuk speaking about nedarim, and we can apply it to all type of financial matters, then I have a problem. How do you know that a girl who works, what she earns goes to her father? The Torah puts the word bitay right near the word amma to tell us that they're similar. Ma amma, just like a maidservant. Ma'asiyah de la rabba, whatever she produces goes to her adain. Afbas, so a daughter, ma'asiyah de la aviyah. Now the question is, why do I need the special Gzer Shava to tell us that the father has the rights to the earnings of his daughter? Why don't you learn it out of Binu Rabbi Savia? Lamali, typically me Binu Rabbi Savia. You said there's a general rule to be learned from the parsha of the Dorim. Binu Rabbi Savia, Kol Shvach Nurim Lavia. Whatever she produces goes to her father. Why do I need a specific limud of Bitay La'amah to teach you about Ma'aseh Yadayim? Ella, what are you going to say? That you cannot use Binu Rabbi Savia as a source. You know why? Because Ahuba first the Dorim Hudachsev. That Binu Rabbi Savia is speaking about Isser. It's speaking about Hafarish Nedarim. And who said you could learn a halacha of Dinei Mamonis from there? And if you want to say, yeah, I learned it from the Nedarim, I'll answer, Mamona Meisura Layafina. You can't learn Mamona from Isura just because Lagabe Dinei Isser Veheter. We say that he has the right to be made for Nedarim. That in no way will tell us that he gets to keep anything that she produces. And if you want to say we should learn from Knas, now by the halach of Knas, which is Oynis, Mafata, or by the case of Motzi Shem Ra, there's a Knas, and there the Torah is very explicit, so maybe just like by Knas, the father of the Naira gets it, so maybe her Ma'aseh Yadayim, the father should get as well. Once again, the Gemara says that's not a good Makar. And if you want to say that, forget the Knas of Oynis, we know that the boishes and the pagam of a woman who suffers by being violated by somebody, she doesn't get that payment if she's a naira. Her father gets that payment. Zok Gemara, that's not either a good raya. Kashani boishes pagam davia nami shaykh pay. Our Gemara told us enough memo with bays that the reason why the father gets boishes pagam is because he owns that boishes and pagam. He had a right to inflict this boishes and pagam on his daughter because he had the right to let her be miskadeshes to any man he wants with Bia. So since he owns that in her, logic dictates that that should be his money. But how do you know that Ma'aseh Yadayim? So you have to say, El Mistabra, I'm sorry, not how you know my time. Now that we've proven that you cannot learn anything about Mamonis from Benurei Beisavia, how do you know that the father, when he marries his daughter off, gets the Kedusha Kesef? El Mestavra, the Chimamayit Rachmano Yitzid the Kavasa Kamamayit. So let's think about this. We made a dik. It said the Yotza Chinam Ein Kasef. And we want to say that by the Yitzia, when she leaves the house of her master, she goes out with no money. But when she leaves the household of her father, there will be money. The Gemara asked, maybe she gets it. How do you know he gets it? So the Gemara is saying, it's either kavasa kamamai. When she's leaving her Adon's household, right? Now, when she's leaving it after 6 years, when she becomes a nair, of course, there's no payment. But if she was leaving the Adon's household before her time was up, due to a redemption, who would get the money? Her Adon would get the money, right? If she's leaving the Adon's rishus, the person who's relinquishing his rights to her is getting paid. And therefore, it makes sense to say that it's referring to the father who gets the money, because once again, when she gets married, she's leaving her father's rishus. But regardless, the two yitzias are very different. Her leaving her Adon is very different from her leaving her father's domain. When she's leaving the Adon, she's leaving completely. She has nothing to do with him. Her relationship is completely severed. That's a full Yitzia. But Yitzia the Av, when she leaves her father's domain, Akati Mechzer Masir L'chuppah. Even though she's getting Kedushin, she's still somewhat in her father's domain because there's no chuppah yet. So therefore, you shouldn't be able to bring the raya that there's kesef kedushin and it goes to the father by comparing this yitzia to that yitzia, because they're not parallel yitzias. Nevertheless, in a certain way, she has totally left her father's domain with the kedushin alone. So therefore, the yitzias are similar. When she's leaving the household of her adon, she's completely leaving his household. So too, when she's leaving the household of her father with kedushin, she's completely leaving his control. Lagabi one halacha, lagabi the halacha of a forest nedarim, because he no longer has exclusive control over her nedarim. The father no longer has the exclusive control over her nedarim. Her husband has a say. So you see that she left his exclusive domain. So therefore, if I ask you what's the makar, how do you know that the kesef kedushin goes to the father and that the father is in charge of the kedushin? We learn it from V'yotza Chinam Ein Kasef, which it says by an Amr Vriya leaves the household without any exchange of payment, and we're medayik that when she leaves the household of her father, there will be an exchange of payment, and the payment will go to her father. That's how we know that Allah. Shtarubia, where do you know that the father? We know one of the methods of kedushin is shtar, and one of the methods of kedushin is bia. But how do you know that the father gets to control that? Minolam Amrikra. It says v'hoysel lishacher. It says in a pasuk regarding a woman who got divorced and got remarried. It says v'hoysel lishacher. The Torah is not specific in how she married this other man. It just says she married somebody else, no matter which method that she used. So from there we learn Ishkos Havayis Ladodi. We learn that all Havayis are the same, meaning all of the different ways where a woman can get married always have the same halacha. And just like we've proven that the kesef kedushin goes to the father, so too we'll know through this hekesh that if she was niskalish b'shtar b'biyah, it also works through the father. Okay, we'll stop here and we'll be mamshech tomorrow.
This thing I read yesterday. I get this email like 3 times a week.